Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy Nix coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today on the channel. This one was highly requested. This is gonna be the multi-band compression beginner's guide. So let's jump into it right away. I'm gonna show y'all a couple of different abstract, outside of the box ways that I like to use multi-band compression. If y'all do have any more ideas for content or any type of tutorials y'all want to see, drop it down below. We're more than happy to get to it. Let's not waste no time at all. Let's jump right into it and start getting to this information. Come on.
Every time I keep it real with you, you lie to me. I just wanted things to go back and be how I used to. Everybody need me, my father even neglecting me. Bitch, you lied to me, my mom the only thing protecting me. God bless me with wisdom and help me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life where I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future with nightmares that reviving the past. J-Mac, you won't be straight, them nigga told me. I'm young and black, I learned the dream from watching Kobe. You see what I'm doing, now you acting like you know me. I know you gon' fold on me just by the shit you show me. I keep this shit so real that they be telling me to stop. You ain't even feeling love me till you see my body drop. You were supposed to be my dog, but you been rockin' with the R. Why you acting like you beef when you know I be on the block? Why I gotta ask around before I can know the truth? And why the fuck I show you love for if I can't vent to you? And every time I write, it feel like this what I was meant to do. I had everything I wanted, girl, but I was missing you, missing you.
All right, so that's the song that we got into right here today. So let's look into multi-band compression. So usually the multi-band compressor that I use most of the time is the C4, but let's talk about what exactly a multi-band compressor is. So a multi-band is a compressor that kind of lets you get a little bit more surgical. Pretty much what it does, it allows you to work on maybe a specific part. So in my opinion, if you don't understand the basics of compression, like if you don't understand a FET compressor or opto compressor or VCA, if you don't understand what that is, then you shouldn't probably be touching around a multi-band, because before you run, you got to know how to walk. You know what I mean? This is kind of like a really advanced thing that it's a very powerful tool, but it can also mess up your mix if you don't do it the right way. So I see a multi-band compressor kind of like a sushi chef. You know, it comes in and chops the signal into multiple crossover points. You know, so it's like a sushi chef. So it's like low, mid range, top end. You know, it pretty much cuts it up into a bunch of different pieces and lets you start digging and working in on it, you know. So the main thing that we have to understand with a multi-band compressor is you got to understand how sound works. So generally when it comes to like the higher end frequencies, yes, those usually have a lot more energy. You know, high end frequencies usually travel a lot quicker. They usually move a lot faster. In lower end frequencies like the bass, the lower mid, all that stuff, the waves are a little bit longer, so they move slow, and those are kind of what we call quote unquote the sustaining type of energy. Okay, then the next thing that we have is the attack and the release. So we got to always understand what the attack and the release. Generally, as a rule of thumb, when it comes to the attack, it's kind of like how you want to shape, especially like the high mid transient. So that kind of like is determining, you know, how you want to hit that first initial hit of where the energy is at for the wave and everything like that. And the most important thing for me is the release. So as a general rule of thumb, when it comes to the release, like I just said, the higher end, the waves move a lot faster, and the low end, the waves move a lot slower. So how I remember it too is, you know, with the top end energy, I kind of remember it like a mosquito. You know, like mosquitoes are short, they're quick, they move around, pop, you hit them one time, they're gone. And that's kind of what high end energy is. It's kind of like when somebody closes a door when they're driving in their car and all you hear is boom, 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 boom. Because a lot of the higher energy, you know, it can disappear a lot quicker than low end energy. And with the low end energy, I kind of remember it like as in like a snake. You know, a snake is long, but it takes a lot more time for it to digest its food and swallow it. You know, a snake can't eat something in one bite. So that's how I remember, you know, the high and the low, you know, type of wave situation. So let's look at this and let's look at how I multi-band this lead vocal real quick.
I just wanted things to go back and be how I used to. Everybody need me, my father even neglecting me. Bitch, you lied to me, my mom the only thing protecting me. God bless me with wisdom and help me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life where I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future with nightmares that reviving the past. J-Mac, you won't be straight, them nigga told me. I'm young and black, I learned the dream.
So that's the thing about multiband compression. It can be used in a couple different ways. All right, let me tell you about the construction worker side, which is the utility side. You can sometimes use this high band right here, and you can kind of set the crossover between somewhere in that upper mid range. Anywhere that you might hear a little bit of harshness, you would play around with the range to kind of isolate where is the sibilance, and you can pull down the threshold and use kind of like a fast attack and fast release, or whatever you feel that is suiting. With the high end, you know, you can use it as a utility way of being a de-esser, but it's kind of a little bit better than a de-esser because it really lets you dial in the attack and release times. So maybe you want to still keep a little bit of the impact of the S, but you don't want to kill it the whole way. So maybe that might be a reason why you might use a C4 over de-esser. Another trick that I love to use, I love to, you know, compress this super top end here. And a trick to get a little bit of brightness is you can go over here and make the release kind of very long. And with the top end, what it will do is quote unquote boost the noise floor. You know, sometimes when people do compression, they say, oh, you're boosting the noise floor, because what compression is doing is it's kind of like squeezing everything, you know. So sometimes it makes a little bit of rumble. It makes everything kind of more apparent, you know, but you can use that to your advantage. You know, boosting the noise floor is not always bad. You can quote unquote boost the noise floor of the top range. So if you're compressing more of the air over here, you know, like 7K or above, or the 10K is the higher ranges, you can just kind of bring in more of that rumble, more of that air, and it will kind of sound a little bit more brighter. You know, the people who are listening to the music will kind of hear it as a little bit more brighter, because now they hear a little bit of that air, a little bit of that rumble, because you're compressing it and you're bringing it forward in the mix. So let's listen to this trick.
I just wanted things to go back and be high. Used to everybody leave me, my father even neglected me. Bitch, you lied to me, my mom the only thing protecting me. God bless me with wisdom and help me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life where I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future with nightmares that reviving the past. J-Mac, you won't be straight, them nigga told me. I'm young and black, I learned the dream from watching Kobe. You see what I'm doing, now you acting like you know me. I know you gon' fold on me, tip all the shit you showed me. I keep this shit so real.
Okay, so then you went ahead and heard it right there, how it kind of sounded like before when I bypassed it, it just kind of sounded like a regular vocal, which is good sometimes, but by using a slower release on the high band, I was able to add a little bit more brightness because I'm literally compressing the top. You hear more of the room noise, and because, you know, we hear more of the room noise, we perceive it as brighter. So that's a trick there. So multi-band, I usually go based on the rapper's flow. You know, the tempo of the music is going to be very critical to the settings, and kind of how that multi-band compressor is moving up and down is going to let you know if it's moving right. You know, the release times are very important because you could literally mess up somebody's flow. You know, the way they're rapping da 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 or da 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 da, like he's being more melodic here. So I wasn't too invasive with my multiband. And that's another important thing to understand about multiband, is that it's a great alternative to static EQ. Maybe sometimes you have a problem frequency and you only want to handle it for a certain time. You know, you can use something like the multiband, like how I used here, to kind of just smooth off the S's. The vocal is very bright, but that's kind of the sound that I was going for with this song. Very bright, but not tiring to the ears. So multiband compression helps keep that you still hear that brightness, but it's not scratching your ears. Okay, next thing, let's move on to the C6. So the C6 is kind of like the bigger brother of the multiband right here. So what I did is you can create a sidechain. You know, with C6 sidechain, you can go with the lead vocal and you can send it to a bus, kind of like how I did, and I did a pre-fader as well. So as you can see here, you know, we have that. Now I would not recommend this to be your main method as to how you make a vocal fit in a beat, because if you got to do this just to make your vocal sound mixed in, then you don't know how to mix. So you need to figure out all the other things like compression, how to do EQ, all the little basics, like how I said before in the song, you know, in the video, about how, you know, if you don't got your license, you know, how are you gonna expect that you could drive a car? You know, if you don't know how to ride on a tricycle, how can you expect to hop on a bicycle? You feel me? You got to learn the basics of everything else. So that's the thing about multiband. It's kind of an advanced thing. Most important thing, we side chaining the vocal to the 2-track beat. So every time that the vocals coming in is pressing down the 2-track beat. And I like to use C6 a little bit better because you have these free floating bands. So if you were to turn off this and this, it would become another C4, and we already understand that. And let's kind of look at how you can make a little bit of space in the 2-track for the vocal using multiband, but it's better than EQ. I've seen some people literally EQ the 2-track beat. Never do that. If you got to put in all this work on the 2-track beat, charge it to the game. You did not pick the right beat. So I always try to prioritize picking the best beat, and that's something that you got to learn. You know, what is a good sounding beat? You know, what beat appeals to you? And even then, you know, if you're mixing for other people, you got to have a conversation. Be like, yeah, you know, that beat had a little bit of bass. Let me show you a beat that sounds just like that, but, you know, is a little bit better for you. It's going to make the whole song sound a little bit better. You got to have conversations with artists about this type of stuff.
In the field, you don't show no color too early. I still ain't signed a deal. I just still can't wait till I make it and get my mama meal. Thinking about the stage and the money, I start to get the chill. When I put my foot down, I started throwing hands. Cause niggas envy you when you up and he was just smashed. You might listen, but I need for you to understand. Everybody doubt me when I.
So you definitely hear that, you know, usually with the C6, usually the vocal, most of the energy of a vocal is mid-range. So it's usually in that upper 1K and above type of situation. So you can do it kind of wherever you want to do it at, wherever it sounds good. Now you got to understand that sometimes there's other instruments in that same range for the 2-track beat, and you don't necessarily want to be invasive to the 2-track beat and hurt that thing, you know. You just want to make a little hole. You got to get in where you fit in with the vocal. So it's a kind of a situation like that where I like to look around from like the 1 to 3K range for where the vocals really sitting at. But you definitely hear that kind of shines a light on the vocal, kind of brings it to the forefront, kind of like, you know, it's a talent show or something going on, and now the vocal has the front stage for the listener to be like, okay, hey, this is what's going on. Okay, another technique that I like to use is I like to use this plugin here, which is the Softube Drawmer 73. So if you still don't understand multiband, you know, this would probably be a very good plugin to start for you, because it has a bunch of like algorithms, a bunch of presets already set up inside of it, where, you know, you have bass control, clarity, you have all these things that are good for you. But you got to watch out, because sometimes when you do multiband in parallel, you can kind of get some phase issues. But let's listen to how I juiced up the 2-track beat using a multiband compressor, you know, already knowing that I did a little cut. You know, sometimes you can use this to bring back some of that punch, bring that some of that energy.
What I'm doing, now you acting like you know me. I know you hold on easy body. So I keep this shit so red that you can take the beat stop. You ain't need feeling love me till you see my body drop. You supposed to be my dog, you rockin' me the arm. Why you acting like you need me? You know I be on the block. Why I gotta last around? Why I can know the truth? Why the fuck I show you love for? If I can fit you, and every time I write it, feel like this what I would make you do. I had everything I.
So I really like this plugin a lot for how much it costs. I think it's like in the $40. This plugin is a little gem just because it makes multiband very easy. It also has that air band, and you just kind of hear like it helped the guitars get a little bit more space. But I like this kind of method right here because it's parallel. And like I said, you know, if you got to be doing all this extra work on your 2-track beat, then you pick the wrong beat. You know, at the most I do a little saturation on my 2-track beat just to help it get some life, because sometimes when you convert it and download it, it could lose a little bit of that and get flat. But after that, I don't really do much to my 2-track beat. I just try to pick the best 2-track beat, and that's what you got to learn how to do. You know, stop trying to remake the 2-track beat. You know, you just got to pick the best one. You know, it's too many good producers out here nowadays for you not to be finding a good beat. Like, it's so many beats. Imagine what it was like back in 2002 and 2019. Bro, people ain't used to have beats like this. Like, so y'all really spoiled, you know? Like, that's what I think about. And if you can't find a good beat, then what is you doing, bro? Like, you need to learn how to get a good beat. It's too many good producers out here to be like, oh, let me try to soothe on the 2-track and let me try to juice up the 2-track. As a mixer, you got so much other stuff going on. You got to know where your priorities stay at, you know, in the mix, you know. So then after that, another great method I like to use is I like to take the background vocals and I like to sidechain them to the lead vocals. So what I have right here is I have a FabFilter Pro MB, and I love using like a kind of like a bell, or maybe sometimes even using like a whole shelf, just ripping the whole top. And I love to use the sidechain, especially with Studio Rat. You know, Studio Rat is just a gem. You know, if you're not using Studio Rat, you should maybe give it a try. It just takes all your plugins that you already got and it just lets you chain it a lot better. So main thing right here is that I've just got a situation where the background vocals are sidechained to the lead vocal. Now you can only do this method when you have good background vocals, you know, and pay attention to this too. You know, I went a little bit crazy. I went outside the box. I actually automated this. So this is only coming in during the verses. So let's listen to the hook. You know, the background vocals are kind of blending in when it's the hook, but when the vocal come through, when it's the verse, now all of a sudden you hear like the background vocals is just pushing forward. Now you can really hear the emphasis on the specific words that he's saying. So let's listen to it.
Me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life where I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future with nightmares that reviving the past. J-Mac, you gon' be straight, them nigga told me. I'm young and black, I learned the dream from watching Kobe. You see what I'm doing, now you acting like you know me. I know you gon' fold on me just by the shit you show me. I keep this shit so real that they be telling me to stop. You ain't even feeling love me till you see my body drop. You were supposed to be my dog, but you been rockin' with the R. Why you acting like you beef when you know I be on the block? Why I gotta ask around before I can know the truth? And why the fuck I show you love for if I can't vent to you? And every time I write, it feel like this what I was meant to do. I had everything I wanted, girl, but I was missing you, missing you. Loyalty is hard to find when you out here in the field. You don't show no color too early, I still ain't signed a deal.
So as you pay attention, when the verse is kind of over and he goes into like his little pre-bridge type of situation, like now you start to hear the vocal start to blend, but when it was the verse, it was emphasis, you know. So that's a very, you know, kind of outside of the box way you can use multiband compression. Okay, and then another great way I like to use a multiband compressor, man, this microphone in front of me, but another great way I like to use a multiband compressor is you could also use it as an upwards expander. So in a situation like this, I mean, you could also have, I have my ad-libs getting pushed up by the multiband. So that's another great way that C4 does it. Lets you do compression, which is downwards, but you can also do expansion, which is upwards. So you can make the ad-libs pumping, you know, kind of bring up to the forefront of the music, but in a very dynamic way, not actually just, you know, pushing up more of the frequencies, more of like multiband compression that's literally pushing it. So it just kind of make the whole music sound wavy, like you got to push, pull type of, you know, it brings the life to music. That's what multiband compression does. Just showing you a bunch of different abstract ways to use it rather than to be like, oh yeah, you know, I just use it as a de-esser or for control or. But I kind of use this on my mix bus as well, and I use gentle comp, and I used it as a little bit of parallel compression on my whole mix. Let's hear how the Drawmer, it really did kind of help the mix a little bit, so let's listen.
Me see through a lot of things. I've been trying to pray because lately I feel a lot of pain. Living life where I live, I bet that you wouldn't lie. Dreaming about the future with nightmares that reviving the past. J-Mac, you won't be straight, them nigga told me. I'm young and black, I learned to dream from watching Kobe. You see what I'm doing, now you acting like you know me. I know you gon' fold on me just by the shit you show me. I keep this shit so real that they be telling me to stop. You ain't even feeling love me till you see my body drop. You were supposed to be my dog, but you been rockin' with the R. Why you acting like you beef when you know I be on the block? Why I gotta ask around before I can know the truth? And why the fuck I show you love for if I can't vent to you? And every time I write, it feel like this what I was meant to do. I had everything I wanted, girl, but I was missing you, missing you. Loyalty is hard to find when you out here in the field. You don't show no color too early, I still ain't signed a deal.
So yeah, I kind of like what this Drawmer is doing. I think it's a pretty good plugin. Especially for a mix like this where it has the 808 but then also has the bass coming from the guitars as well, and they really kind of help tighten up that low end a lot. So the great thing about this plugin is that it's very cost effective. Also, you get to have a dry mix knob, which is very interesting. You know, usually when you do a multi-band in parallel, most of the time it might not sound right because there might be some phase issues, but this plugin does it in a very good way that, you know, you have a bunch of presets like vocal enhance, ambience, wide mix. You have a bunch of these dope presets, and it makes it so easy for you to understand multiband. So maybe if you still don't get it after watching this video, you know, maybe you want to demo that plugin. You could demo it for 20 days and start to get a very a basic understanding of you know, what multiband compression is. So this is a couple ways that I like to use multiband compression. I wanted to show you. I didn't want to make the video too long, but you know, I just showed you guys today how to sidechain the vocal to the 2-track beat. I talked about how you can add brightness using the multiband compression rather than using boosting EQ. We also talked about how you can sidechain the background vocals to the lead vocal and even automate that to create moments, to create a big vibe and transition in the music. We also talked about how you can use a multiband compressor on the ad-libs to help push the ad-libs forward and give it a little bit of more movement that you couldn't get from, you know, other effects. And then also we talked about using multiband compression on the mix bus chain. So that's everything that we have here for today, guys. I just want to say thank you very much for being a great part of my YouTube family. Any comments or questions, drop it down below. Really appreciate y'all, YouTube gang. Peace.